just to record. Yes. Hi, Mark. We're talking about your book. It's on
mirror
gallery view. Yes. Early retirement. I wanted, because it's so beautiful, for a beginning, I wanted maybe you could read this first paragraph, because it's interesting. One has to say this book was conceived in early summer 2016. So very interesting what you write. Maybe I can read another paragraph after, because that's telling a lot.
So I wrote this. I wrote this for this book, but I had been writing something, kind of trying to compose my thoughts around my time prior to the election of 2016 in America, and some of the events after. So I write, "Dear reader, the book you are about to read is the tale of social reformation in an attempt to make America a utopia. Social reformers come and go, annexing short-lived traditions for a vision of the new. Through drawing, piece together a working theory of a constant non-utopia. The images and characters depicted in this book serve as a guide, fleshing out the desire to reach unattainable perfection. Over several months, I sat at my dinner table, drawing in the evening, often thinking about the previous summer at Yale, Norfolk Summer School of Art, where I was a professor of drawing. For some reason that summer, there was a perfect harmony amongst the students and faculty. Even though the rest of the world was in turmoil, this wasn't because we were blind to what was occurring. In fact, we were very engaged with what was going on, having open discussions about the Pulse nightclub massacre, Black Lives Matter movement, climate change, and the looming election in November of 2016. By the end of that summer, I wanted to understand why this community came so close to representing my idea of a utopia, and why it is that we, as a society at large, fall so short." I can keep going if you like.
Yeah, and in the end of this intro paragraph, you write, "It is my hope that this book stimulates you to think about your relationship to your community and society as a whole. Are you truly contributing to create the future that you claim to desire, or are you passively allowing it to fall apart?" The thing which is really amazing is how now people write that America is falling apart, like in the COVID crisis. And I just wanted to say that maybe this was a presentiment, or I mean, you at that time in 2016, did you think that the government is changing? No.
Oh yeah.
You did?
I did, because I mean, I'm not like a great student of history. I do study a little bit of history, and just thinking about Reconstruction in America after the Civil War, and the idea of how do you reconcile what has happened in this country? How do you reconcile our issues in this country? And we are very poor stewards of our own future in this country. I would say we tend to band-aid our issues. We don't really try to we think about like all the great reformers. If you think about the people who've tried in this country, or were elected to certain positions, or created unions, or created like different mass movements, they all had a period of time, and almost as if they died, there was never the same continuum to it. But there's this kind of weird embedded, almost deconstructive nature to the way that America operates, that I felt that when this person became president, he spoke to that. And it's a simplicity. It's something, instead of the we, it's the me. So it's like it's easier to always to order your life and your agenda by what you want personally as a desire, as opposed to thinking about the greater good of others. So that laziness, that, I don't know, that sense of tumult because of our economy and our way, our structure of our society has been for the last, like, I don't know, before I was born, definitely. I see it like just happening and occurring, and I felt like, oh yeah, no, this is going to get worse, and it's going to get weird, and it's going to get strange, and it's going to push people to a certain point. And for some of us, I think as artists, we tend to have a sensitivity to these things. So like the idea of making a book, the idea of making this book in particular, even like the narrator in the story, which you find out at the end is Christmas Addicts. It's like a person who was an incidental human being who happened to be at the right moment at the wrong time. And like that person being the first person shot in the Revolutionary War, and then kicks this whole thing off. It's like to think about way artists intersect, or bodies or humans intersect with events in history that are kind of beyond them. And sometimes we're very sensitive to it. And I think artists are very sensitive to this. And we tend to speak to each other about these kind of things that we see coming, and the things that we kind of see interacting, and the play of people. And we don't really, I think that the book, what it did for me as an artist, and what a book always does for me, or writing a book, or writing anything, or making art, is that I have an idea, a very light idea. And for me, the question was about utopia in this book, and trying to figure out, what does that mean? What does it actually mean for me? And I had to go back and read Utopia, and then I had to read about it, and I had to talk to other people about it. And then I had to realize, for me, it's about this idea of reconciliation between human beings, and trying to understand that there's a middle ground. If we can be intelligent about our lives and each other, that we can actually reach to something that would be not exactly what I want, and maybe not exactly what you want, but something we can live with.
So when things happened, like in November 2016, that was just like if the dystopia would have been put in place, right?
But I would say, but I would say in America, for many people, especially for Black people, it's par for the course. It's simply that this culture does this. It's what it does. It's what it does. It elects people who don't care about everyone, who tell you almost that they don't care about people. They tell you to be selfish.
Before,
yeah. And so it's just that it's the perfect storm between a narcissist and a villain being in control of a body of people who are disgruntled, and yet don't want to do the work of figuring out why they're disgruntled. It's about doing the work. And I think post that election, for a lot of people I knew and students I knew, and people would ask me, like, what do you think? What do you think? And I said to a lot of people, the question in America so much is that, like, we need to understand why people did vote for this person. Why do people want the things that he's claiming to offer? And to really do like a house cleaning of sorts to try to get to that. But I wouldn't have been able to come to that, even that middle ground of understanding, or trying to even reconcile or have a conversation with people, unless I had made this work. And the idea of the book in itself, and the fact that, quality of the paper, the quality of the ink, double printed black, it's silk screened on like white on black. I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I've never been told so much by so many people that how beautiful something is that I've made. And it was only really due to working with you, and working with Teo and like Stephanie,
Yes, Stephanie Rabanati did with you
Yes.
together the picture editing, the image editing.
Yes.
For me, it's a narration. It's a story. And
Yes.
Can you maybe describe the protagonists in this story?
So the story, there's
just to make the difference between you're an artist. You're not a comic artist. You're not not a comic book. It can look a little bit
exactly
like a comic book, but it uses the means and techniques of comic books, but it's not. So it's something different, but it's a story. Can you
it's a mode. It's like that. it's very important for people to understand that the comic medium, or the look of the comic medium, or the pop medium, it's a mode of thinking, it's a mode of address, it's a mode of communication. So like my narrator in the storyline is this kind of almost crypt keeper like character, but he's dressed in kind of like a pre-revolutionary garb. And he's telling you the story that's kind of continuation of the first book that I made. It was a self-published book called Some Monsters Loom Large. And it's kind of wrapping this in and kind of taking you from some of that previous story to tell you this new tale. And this new tale, we follow this character that was introduced in the previous book called Mr. Wolfson. And he's kind of a modern day prophet. And, one over to your right. And so he,
Oh,
and,
sorry.
So he's a person who goes on the street, who holds up a sign saying the end is nigh. He's someone who is like, that kind of low level prophetic truth, I think, that people have, where they kind of can look at the situation and see the problem, but they don't really have a solution. So they go out in the world and they kind of, they protest from the position of identifying with the issue. But the idea of actually how do you resolve the issue and what that issue may be, that is the front, that's the angst, right? Like that's the frustration of that person who is aware enough to see the problem.
But Mr. Wolfson, Mr. Wolfson is he knows the problem, or he's naive?
Yeah, I think it's like, because I've always been aware of people, or like people who seem like they're insane, but they're saying what you would normally, you think about, but you're like, okay, I would not devote my life to standing on a corner and holding up a sign saying that. But that person is doing this work, and there's this type of labor that goes into that like we don't really think about, where someone addresses this issue, they see this issue, but yet you could tell that they don't have a way to actually access an answer. So all they can do is to be a sign. All they can do is to be a signpost on the side of the road saying like, this is, we're going the wrong way. And so that, the character after the election and after the world kind of for him does come to an end, he's taken to this other dimension where he's shown this thing that I refer to as the truth or the word, and it's a zigzag pattern. And he goes back into the world and he starts showing people the zigzag pattern, and people start unifying around him based on this design, based on this symbol that I've used in other works, and like things like about power and about energy and thunder and electricity and universal power. And, but it's a unity. And so the character goes through all this and this turmoil, but there's other characters who are also kind of on their own path, and some of their paths are interjecting with his path. And the ending of the book, which I didn't know what it was going to be for some time, has a lot to do with these things that you, as an artist, you like to have sketchbooks, you have friends, you have all these ways in which you document your life in outside of yourself. And while working on this project, I was going back and looking at old books, and I was looking at talking to friends, and I was like addressing things and having lots of conversations, while almost not directly speaking to the book that I was working on, but just keeping my mind in the realm of it. And I started thinking about this thing as a kid. I used to sit with my hands like this a lot and look at my hands and that zigzag in that pattern. And I always would sit there in my hands and thought it was such an interesting thing, and connected but separate. And that in the book, this character shows this other person that, this hand, the two hands like connected. It's near the end of the book. I usually don't give it all away, but but it's like, after all the turmoil and after all the things, it's much further back. It's like maybe 3 to 4 pages from the end. Maybe I have a copy here. Why am I making you have to?
Yeah, you can look it up too.
But he shows them this, and like, so that zigzag that you've been seeing throughout the book, he's showing them this, and he shows them that this is about this kind of human unity that we actually have, that we do want to come together, but it's not going to be easy. It's like that, like power, electricity, friction, all of those things are a part of this human condition, a part of our society, and that we have to negotiate it. It goes back and forth, but it's connected. But if you don't have the ability to actually like reconcile, to balance each other, to work off of each other, to define off of each other, then we will separate. We'll be fractious. And the sad thing in America, and I think, and this is just goes throughout all human history and all cultures, is that if you don't have proper leadership, or you have leadership who leads through the idea of division, it's very easy to have people to separate themselves and to unify, to create the idea of like human unity, people's unity. It's strange, like this with this virus, it puts to test, like, and when I talk about comics as being a mode, I will also talk about science fiction. I also talk about like other things which I think are different modes of way of thinking about our experiences as human beings. But when we think about this virus, we think about this pandemic, it's very similar to something like War of the Worlds. It's very similar to something where a creature or a being or an alien thing has occurred, and humans are being attacked, and we have an option of either unifying and just taking out this thing, or are we going to be divisive? And the way we tell our stories and our narratives, like in Independence Day or other movies, is that humans get together, we rally, and we take on the thing. But if your leadership is ignorant, if your leadership is narcissistic, if your leadership is golfing while the city burns, divisive, then you see what happens. You see it becomes politicized to try to take care of yourself. It becomes politicized to take care of others. It becomes divisive to and it's like, and to what end? So one person can still supersede and maintain power? Like that's insane. And that is the issue. That is the problem. That is the thing. That is the thing we're dealing with at this moment.
It's written, you said that you had a plan to break the pattern. Can you maybe explain this double spread?
So the character, so there's one main character who's like this drummer character. So there's like the flute player, the harp player, and then there's a drummer. And the three of them were in the previous story, and they're like these angels that come down when the world comes.
Wolfson here?
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Okay.
Well, he's the angel. He's kind of related to him. They're interconnected. And the idea is that the drummer, the rhythm, the beat, the backbeat, the sound, that character, he's fed up with like playing the role. He's fed up of being the backbeat. He's fed up of being the rhythm. He's fed up of like participating. It's like similar to like Martin Luther King said that I'm not actually the leader. I'm just the drummer. Like I'm just a part of the march. I'm just a part of this thing. And so this character is aware enough to understand that he's just a part of this thing, and he's kind of tired of being a part of this thing. So he's the one who actually delivers that information to Mr. Wolfson. He's the one who actually brings Mr. Wolfson to see the word. He's the one who gives him that knowledge. And he does it as a way to disrupt the world, as a way to like change the pattern of the way things interact in the world. But by doing so, it things go wrong. And I think that's, I've been listening to some people discuss this idea of like, thinking about the economy or thinking about the way we do things, and that the revanche history of American thought right now, that for our political system, especially on the right, to be in a consistent game of like, let's return back to when this was better. Let's go back. It wasn't that bad. It wasn't better back then. But the idea of that versus really doing what asked for work. Like, I think that's the game that's being played right now, is that those who are on the far left, we're talking about the idea of the we, and the idea of mounting something, of changing things, of fixing things, of mending things, of like doing, work. The other side is saying, let's just not do anything. Let's just return. Let's go back to our wombs. The reason why people want to go back to the 1950s or 60s, or hell, people are saying, I wish it was like the 80s, which, come on. It's because you were a child and it was easy and your parents took care of you and it was nice and it was warm. That's why. That's why it has such warm feelings for you. You were taken care of. But like,
you mean that's the main reason? That's the main reason why people glorify the past.
I think it's an element of it because they yeah, they were children. They didn't know. They didn't know, or if they did know, they were on one side of something where they weren't getting up and going to work. And some people were. I mean, my dad started working when he was 13, but like he was working in the segregated South. He was working in all. Yeah,
and they were told what to do.
Yeah, exactly. He was being told what to do, where to go, what bus he could be on, where he could go, what time he could be. See, for me, there is no back. The back is hell. The back is slavery. The back is oppression. And so when someone is telling me that they want to go back, that they mean that they want to return to a space where I'm an oppressed person. And that does not function for me. That does not work. That is not allowable. So that right there, that is something that if that becomes a divisive line between my sovereignty and your sovereignty, then if that's where we're at right now, that is a level of fraction that will cause massive harm and damage in the future. And if we have a leader who's too ignorant and too narcissistic to see that, and who will use that to have power, then we're in trouble. Like, we're really in trouble. And the global community, they can only do so much,
On the other hand, you could say that this pattern of one side saying, let's go back and make America great again, where for you it's hell. And the other side say, no, let's go into a better future.
Yeah.
But this pattern, which was totally divisive, like I would say, there's this hardcore group of rightists, rightist people, and equally hardcore group of leftist people, is somehow also interrupted by, the pattern is also somehow interrupted by Corona, don't you think?
Yeah, I think it was. I think it was for a minute. And then
now not anymore, you think?
No, because how can I say this? We are, like, from my own experience in witnessing things in this country, we have a very short attention span. And we've been bred to have a very short attention span because that helps you consume things more. You almost don't know you're full because you just are being told to eat more, to consume more, to buy more. You don't need another sweater, but you're going to buy 2 more sweaters, because that's a new sweater and that's the nice sweater and you get that sweater. That type of constant information shifting, pulling, pushing, that doubt then gets thrown in. Oh, it's a fake pandemic. It's fake. People aren't really dying. Don't worry about it. The reason why we have more cases is because we're testing more. That's actually something that people are saying in our country.
I know.
Like, and it's like that lying, that twisting of truth. It's like when someone says we wanted to reopen, and the president is saying at one side of his mouth, it's up to the governors, and then the other side of the mouth saying that, but we say we shouldn't. But I'm also saying you should liberate. I mean, he said liberate your like liberate. Come on, that's war. That's war. And that, if that's the kind of schism that's created immediately from the top, then we are just like boom. Then everyone falls back on their sides. The people who decide not to follow the guidelines are then considered ignorant, which then plays into that whole idea of the right being ignorant, and these people have no intelligence. That's not fully true. And then the left get to be the side of the good, and then that's not fully true. And all of these like bad movie tropes, like bad like Star Wars movie tropes become like this way in which we like start to decide things. And it's like, why? And it's because we don't have real intelligent discourse. We don't have real, it's like we turned so many of our institutions
Well,
into,
you have, but maybe just between the believers, it's just between the people who know already, or
well,
don't believe but know, certain things. So
in
among
our
them, it's a very, very, very high level discourse in the States. I have the feeling, but it doesn't the other people.
Well, the problem, I think that what was started to, well, in the 90s, there was this whole thing where in America, you had to have, like, if you put something on the news, you had to have a counterpoint, or you had to show a balanced perspective of the events that are taking place. That got removed. The FCC no longer like looked for that. Then you had the rise of Fox News. You had a rise of one side that could just say vehemently false things all day long, all day long, all day long, and never really be stopped and say it's free speech to say a lie all day long. It's free speech to
it's like an opinion or something, or like some people say, or it could be
I've heard.
So there are equal things to the truth.
They're like made equal.
There is no truth, but they're just different kind of opinions. Like that's
exactly.
It's like a kind of a bullshitification of everything.
Yeah.
Like bullshit doesn't care about truth or not. It's not even caring about being a lie or being truth. It's just bullshit. So it's like a bullshitification of the whole communication. You don't say, after all we know and after all studies we read and after all whatever, peer reviews, this is a fact. You don't say that anymore. So you say, well, those people say it's brown and those people say it's green. That's all.
Yeah. And it's about perception. And they say it's about perception, and they say it's about this or that. And it's like, people start to say like the earth is flat. People start to say that we didn't go to the moon. People start to say, that water kills you. People start to say like all these things that like start to get this kind of doubt. And like in that moment, when he's supposed to.
It's a universal doubt on everything which is called fact or evidence or truth in the sense of what is causing something, and not only a correlation of facts or something, but a real cause for something. So you just sort of don't mention that there is this is the cause, So you say, no, they're just different correlations, and you can see it like that, and you can see it like that. Like you said, it's a question of perception and interest and power game and manipulation or whatever.
Yeah.
But if you say the other side is constantly manipulating, you say everybody is manipulating. Not only we are, we aren't, but everybody else is. So in the end, people think that everybody is manipulating.
Well, what you're just saying made me start thinking about something. And I never really thought about this. But what if this is like a misappropriation of people's imagination? Like, in America, we've gotten rid of like we get rid of music programs inside of our schools. We've gotten rid of the arts inside of our schools. We test just so that people can kind of go through a factory system of things. We don't really like put much investment into human imagination. And it's maybe that it's a starved imagination that we have that is getting misappropriated, like misused, and like being like, he's like, human brains are noodlers. Like we like to like take something and pull it apart and try to do something with it and try to manipulate it in some way. But it's like, if you have a bunch of people, a nation of people who don't really, like during this whole epidemic, it's like, for me, I'm lucky. I make art. So like, for me, it's about time. So when this thing happened, I'm like drawing, I'm making work. I'm like, I'm working and still have to teach, still have to do all that work as well, which I love. But at the same time, I'm like able to do something with my imagination all the time. I'm able to imagine and create and have fun and play with myself mentally and go through hoops. And I wonder if it's like there's this little piece in people where that imagination resides. It's like I wonder. It's like sometimes I think in entertainment in America, and I don't know because I've never really. I maybe went to cinema maybe in another country once or twice, but I think it's the way in which like our big movies, our big blockbuster movies, how everything in America is now a blockbuster movie.
Mm-hmm.
And like that whole thing is like that, those movies encapsulate so much imagination and they answer so many questions for themselves. There's no mysteries in them. It begins, middles, and ends. It bookends, it's clean. It's no place for you to wonder. When I was a child, and I remember seeing the movie, you ever seen the movie Back to the Future?
Mm-hmm.
So in Back to the Future, the first film, it ends with like Doc, the main character, Doc Brown, coming up in this DeLorean. He tells him that we have to go to the future. He gets in the car like turns and says, where are we going? We don't need roads. And the car like all of a sudden hovers off the ground and flies away. And it says to be continued. You didn't expect that movie to be a to be continued movie. You didn't expect anything to happen. That as a child watching that, it was just like and even as a child, but also for adults, they were like, what is this? This is insane. This is like another. And so there's so many years between those two movies that come out. It didn't come out like the next Christmas. No new one is going to come out. So your brain is just left to wonder, what is the future going to look like? What are the characters going to do? What is this going to happen? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? Imagination. This answer, these questions of imagination that are happening in our culture, they're not being addressed. We're not being asked to imagine greater things. We're being asked to imagine what we already know. We're being asked to do what we know. That creates a certain kind of mental detritus, like a kind of like lowering that is like, because then it's very easy then, because then what do? People then just go, they just drink, they just party, they just do bullshit.
Like in a normal mainstream big blockbuster Hollywood movie, all your feelings are totally strategically guided, right? So
yeah,
every moment of the film you think something, you feel something, and then you realize that's what I wanted, and that's the place.
Yeah.
That's the moment where I have to cry, and that's the moment where I have to smile. So
yeah,
it for me, it's like a little bit like reality. Every time something like Trump or anything similar like Trump happens in America, you have this feeling from Europe. You have this feeling of that's like in a movie, that's like in a Hollywood movie. So all is scripted, and all the public is like being a scripted public. Like applauding or laughing like in a sitcom. So it's a very strange feeling that actually also here there are those groups who demonstrate against the corona measures. So when you listen to them, you start to realize, and we discussed that, which I think is very interesting. Somebody told me, those people. What we think there are two worlds, like this is the world of normal, sensibly thinking people, like who are reasoning and basing their opinion on truth or found truth or scientific findings, which are true until it's a new finding is falsifying it. So there are two worlds, like the normal, this world of reasoning and everything, and the world of conspiracy theories or myths. So this person said, but you have to think that for those people, or for the hardcore people, though, everything is like that. Everything is like a conspiracy myth. So what we think is this is the normal world, and science and astronomy and physics and biology and Darwinism and whatever. This is all one myth or different myths for those people. So they qualified equally, you know, like their myth, like flat earth myth or whatever. So it's like the same, which is insane to think, you know, because we have this kind of double, we say, oh yeah, this is fiction and this is reality. We still try, I mean, to keep them apart, which is, I think, when you educate a child, this is very important. Became more and more important that you could tell to the child, okay, this is fiction and this is not fiction. You know, it's like what is real, what is virtual, and what is analog, and what is physical, and what is not physical. So it's all. It's tremendously important. And then you really, if you listen to those people, combining Bill Gates and vaccines and 5Gs and the moon landing and the chemtrail, when you listen to them, to those strange kind of narration, you know, they put together and nothing goes together, but then you start to think, they see the whole world like that. You know, which is a really spooky idea, you know.
But I would say it's been that way maybe forever, or like, and I mean, and I say that, and to say, to be able to enslave millions of people, and to perceive them as not being human, and to like, you know, still to have sex with them, still to make children with them, still to like, you know, to do all the things that happened during the slave trade, the transatlantic slave trade. You think there's a certain type of imagination or a certain type of perceptional shift that has to occur to enact that, to put that into terms. And some people did the work of, you know, creating fictions and legitimizing their behaviors, and then legitimizing it for other people, who then legitimize it for more people, and who create greater, deeper fictions into it, that we still are dealing with, that we still are trying to demystify, that we still are trying to, like, as intelligent as I may be, as gifted as I might become, there will still be a person who thinks I'm not a human being. And like, that is insane. But like but there was so much effort, so much work put into creating that fiction that you can't almost explain it away. You can't, it's like when I think about like people loving like sports stars in America, like people loving Michael Jordan, people liking LeBron James. You could have a person who's completely a racist human being love an African-American athlete or celebrity or star, or somebody who they think exemplifies something that they personify inside of themselves. That's projection. That's imagination. That is like some weird thing that we do. Capitalism, the way we function, it's an imaginary thing. The idea of money, all that stuff, it's an agreed upon imaginary structure. Banks, imaginary structures. These are things that we agree upon. It's something that we can do as human beings. Sometimes we can do these things that benefit us and how we construct them, but then it has to be nurtured. It has to be helped. It has to be massaged. It has to be debated. It has to be constructed, because if not, those will manipulate it in their own interest, and they don't care who gets hurt. They don't care who, you know, they just don't care. I mean, when we're talking about the film and talking about that track, that's why I like books. I like the idea of a book because of how it breaks duration, how it breaks time, how it like slows us down, how it makes us address things. Art books specifically, because the possibility of what they can do, because they already are playing within the imagination. There's certain accepted understanding within a tome of where it comes from. If it's fiction, nonfiction, fantasy, history, it has certain parameters. But for me as an artist, I look at those parameters and I say, oh, I can bend that. I can twist that. I can use that for those parameters to elicit other ideas. I can use those parameters to elevate something.
You are allowed to do that as an artist, right?
I choose. I choose, because like that's the thing with being an artist, and as you probably know as an artist as yourself, is that there's a choice of getting up in the day and doing the work. And like, there's a desire to do it. There's a love for me to do it. But then was times in my life where it was like, financially, it wasn't smart to do it. It was like, there was no one supporting me to do it at times. There was like, I would show my work and people would be like, this is ridiculous, you know? So there had to be the will and to imagine this, which I've formed. And like, to define it. And you have to negotiate reality to do that.
But I mean, it's quite a scary idea that politicians or leaders apply methods of artists.
Yes, that's like that goes way back. Yeah, that goes way back. That goes way back. I mean, like,
yeah, I know.
Putin has that guy who's a director, you know, like a play director, a theater director, who's like, you know, helps him organize his strategies. Trump has his people who work from television who help him organize his strategies. He gets people from Fox News who like used to work in this field of communication and journalism to like help devise language for him and create strategies. It's like, it's all a show, this big production. So then when you have someone on the fringe who says it's all fake and so false, they're not 100%, they're not 100% wrong.
No, part of it is fake. Part of it is but not.
The departure, you know.
Yeah, but not the moon is there, you know, turning around the Earth. You know, it goes very far. It's like, this is fiction and this is not true, and what they say is not true, and whatever. So if everything, the whole tissue of reality is sort of infected by fictionalization or possibility of myth, that is all a myth, this is really scary.
But we've been functioning on myths of religion. We've been functioning on myths of religion.
Is that. Religion.
But even if we didn't have that, we had kings. You know, we had like, you know, ordained people. You know, we had, it's almost like it's a part of a human organizational principle, perhaps, to create these structures, these hierarchies. And then what hierarchy do you want to live under is a part of that as well. So I, for one, my own personal belief systems, like for me, okay, Star Trek Next Generation when I was a little kid was a very important thing for me because it showed like a world of possibilities where people would talk their issues out. There was lots of reasoning happening there. Totally fictional thing made in California by a bunch of, you know, whatever, nuts. But there was one episode where like Picard says to this character, Wesley Crusher, there's three truths, you know, three guiding principles of a Starfleet officer: personal truth, historical truth, and scientific truth. These are the things that guide you. And as a young person, when I heard that, it simplified something to me that is extremely complex. Is that if I try to live my life based on my personal truths, meaning my desires, what I know I want, what I know I care about, what I love, what I desire sexually, scientifically, food, whatever I want to bring into my life. And then scientific truth, meaning I have to try to understand the principles in which this universe and the things around me operate. And then historical truth, meaning I need to then investigate the past to understand why certain structures exist the way that they are now. But we do not even teach along those lines. We do not offer students that.
What you just described is actually how an intellectual should think, right? How an intellectual should have his life and in this reality. And what you actually could also ask for a leader, right?
Yes, but if
you imagine, if you can say, you could actually say that Trump is just living along his personal truth, very simple. Yes. And the rest, he takes it when it's fitting and is not taking it when it's not fitting.
Yeah, exactly. So exactly, that's the thing. It's that there's that balance, and then one is like my law. That's personal truth. Historical truth is our laws, our human societal truth, and scientific law, the stuff that we cannot manipulate. And but reconciling those three things, that the sun is going to come up and the sun's going to go down. Like, you cannot fight that.
Not because of the priests who say,
Yes.
come up then.
Yeah. Pray every morning for the sun to come back because it went away. But it's like, because see, that's someone borrowing that power, right? That's someone taking scientific power and making it personal power to then affect historical power.
Exactly.
So but when I think about the way in which I would think about like the book and the opportunity of making this book with you, was that I already knew going into it that when I was thinking about printmaking, I've been thinking about the idea of the multiple. And what the book does is that it creates, in the quality of the book, because of how it's printed, it feels to me much more like a printmaking object. And the silkscreen element of it makes it more of a printmaking object to me. And the quality of the paper and the quality of the way the ink sits on it, it feels like every page gets to be a unique drawn experience. But then that being able to go into different people's homes, that being able to go into people's hands. And so now in my life, thank you to you and thank you to your team, that when I've had times where people now understand my entire practice more because of that book. That people will come to me, or if I want to explain to someone who's bought something of mine, and I'll sometimes send them a book just to show them, like, like, here, like, if you want to know more about me, this is the thing that I'm proudest of that exemplifies what I believe my practice is about.
Actually, what I think about a book. It's a medium of reflection and enlightenment. It can be,
Yes, it can be.
Explanation, enlightenment, and reflection, right? But naturally, books can be very evil. Books
yes, they can.
Lead you, and the thing is that this role of the medium was maybe a little bit taken away from books, and has gone into other medias, like, I don't know, Fox News or social media, whatever. So it's maybe books have become, because they're a bit obsolete, like as a medium, they're analog books is something maybe of another time. It's not going away, but it's put into question, but it's becoming another role, and maybe more the role of a reflective media, of a sensible, about reasoning and discussion and debate.
I think it can be. I think when I think about how the idea for me is always to think about and like balancing things and shifting balance to like get things to operate. And the mode of like the type of drawing that I execute in the work is really about that, creating that imbalance quickly. So people will assume, like, I've had in times where I've spoken to people who are very educated individuals, and they might have a conversation with me, and then they'll come and they'll see my work, and then they'll say, like, but why is it like this? Like, you're interested in all these things. Why are you making this? And why is it like cartoons? And I'm like, do you understand that what Bugs Bunny is? Do you know who Wile E. Coyote is? Your country didn't even make that, but you know what that is, and you understand the conflicts of those characters, and because of what you've seen and how that's imparted into you, that there's these. It goes back to caricature. It goes into, like, I think about like Daumier. I think about Gustave Doré. I think about people who made political art that talked about, the king, and talked about like the way in which the poor people were being affected. And it was done through lithography. It was done through these means that people thought were like cheap and easy, but they had accessibility. They were able to get into people's hands, and they could create language, and they could define the situation, and they could actually explain and explore the problems. And so even simple images like that, where the character's like flying away, or like this kind of body shape, it's like, I don't have to tell you what that means.
That's the last image.
Yeah.
Can you say something to this image?
I think in this image, it was something I had drawn previously when doodling, and I was thinking about just this character, just like flying away, kind of funky, kind of musical, kind of fluidly, like moving into the universe, like kind of on his path. And I I think that that is some way I've tried to live my life in the last decade or so, is more so on my path, that I will,
Is it
I've been,
also, yeah? Is it
yeah, go on, sorry.
is it also slightly escapistic?
Sorry, what was the word?
Is it like an escape also? A little bit?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I had to figure out for myself how to get free, right? I was working for this very famous artist at one point, and she asked me, what do you want? And this was like around the time of like Eric Garner, and there was like protests going outside of her studio. And she said to me, what do you want? It's out of the blue. And I just said, I want to be free. And I had to sit there with that and think about what that meant. And kind of almost from that point in time, that day, I had to then consider what I was doing every day to be free. And like, when given the opportunity to do something or to make something like this with its subtleties, like moments like that in the book, those are things, there's so many things in this book and the way that Teo and worked with me to program it. It's subtle and it's sophisticated. It is something that like when people get it, they hold on to it and they don't quite get what it's accessing in them. And because my goal in it is that I want other people to get free as well. And being free doesn't mean that you take the rights of others. It doesn't mean that you make others less. You can still be free and be giving and be generous and be helpful and to be respectful and still be free. And that book, that's negotiation, the black and the white, the flipping and the contrasting of it, it's all about negotiation. It's all about balance. It's all about, that book, as large as it is light. It's like, it feels good in the hand. The black on the outer edge of the book, these weird things that you see. Yeah.
Very soft.
Yeah. It's soft. It is like, it's warm. That book is warm.
You can
it's
take
like,
it in your bed. You can take it in your
yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, you could take it into your bed. You could hold on to it. You could put it in your bag. It's like, it's one of those things that you can carry with you. And at the same time, because of its quality, it's a unique object. And that's what I love about working with somebody like you who makes unique objects. You think of the book as a unique object.
Yes.
It's like the quality of them are always this way. And like knowing of the other artists that you've worked with in the past, it was funny because when I met Stephanie and we were talking, she would like tell me about, oh, do you know this? We did this book and we did this book. I'm like, wait, you guys made that book? You did that Velvet book? You did this book? You did that book? And I was like, so wait, basically all these books I have on my shelf that I love, you made. And I was like, wow. And it's like, and I wouldn't almost even imagine that they were books made by the same company because they all were so unique. And that,
they look different.
Yeah, they look different. They're different scale, different sizes, different design, different, things about them that maintains their integrity as an art book, maintains their integrity of the voice of the artist, the integrity of the publisher, the integrity of the designers, the integrity of the editors.
Of the cause.
Sorry?
The integrity of the content. Of the
yes,
that's
exactly,
Mark. But I'm just a little bit embarrassed how well you talk about our publishing house.
Because it's not when I say it's rare, I don't mean that. As my time as being an artist, what I've learned is that rarity is really about where you find something. Meaning that you go into one place in the world, there's tons of diamonds, and you go to another place in the world, there's none. The realm in which your company, you operate within, you maybe don't see it because in my world, in some places that I exist, you are rare. You don't exist. But in the conversation that maybe you feel that you exist in, that, oh yeah, this is the world, this is our debate, this is our conversation. So to have access to what you offer and what you produce and what you do, for me was extremely rare because I was like, all of a sudden I was being told that I could like have certain level of input on the manufacturing of this object without any limitation. And this way that made me feel like, oh, this is an art object. This is actually art I'm getting to make here. That I'm being asked to do this because I'm an artist. And so that I get to then put my full measure of thought and care into this object. I don't have to think about where I cut a corner or where I make it minimal or how I make it fit into some other scheme. It was like, no, you're given the reins to create something beautiful because you believe in me and that you think that I can do that. And then as it starts to produce, there was very little like pushback on anything. It was really like, and you know, at the end of the day, then in my head, I'm like, oh my God, I'm making a book. But when I look at the way in which working with Stephanie and working with the team, it was like you did this. It was like this easing kind of like, yeah, so maybe you want to do this. And then it'd be great if you could do the lettering on this. I mean, I lettered the entire thing, and the whole entire thing is my hand. And it was like, but then I was like, yeah, that you're right. I should do that. I should, you know, like.
Yeah, we just like a coach, you know, it's like a coaching process or something.
Yeah, and it's a coaching process.
We go into it. We tell you our opinion. We say what we think. You know, we just don't let it be. We don't just let it go. You know, we accompany it and coach it, and that's sort of it's also. It's a balance also between influence and freedom, and you know, having the artist's vision best possibly realized. You know, like he wants to have it, but also try to get to an optimum in dialogue, like with the dialogue, to go to a step further as if the artist would have done it himself alone.
Oh yeah,
by just his vision, you know, in a pure form, maybe further.
Well, I definitely feel that like that where I was and where I had perceived it going, it's something that like when I pick up the book now sometimes and I look at it and I flip through it, I don't exactly know I made it, in the sense that I see new things. And it's like there was such an elevation that kind of was happening at that time and making it and working through it. So I drew most of it, like, I think within like 6 months. So it was like this constant, it's over like 400 pages or roughly, or under 300, just under 400 pages or so.
Yeah.
So that's like in each page is a drawing. So then that's like, you know, and then I usually have like another 50 or so I don't use. So then, you know, over 450 drawings in like 6 months. And you're just drawing and you're making and you're thinking and you're creating and you're writing and you're establishing and you're doing all this work. And then you're checking in with your team and you're checking in with that. And it's in some weird way, like if I say all that, it sounds like it could be exhausting, but it was exactly the opposite. It was exhilarating. It was like fresh air. It was like if you were sitting at the top of a mountain and someone gives you oxygen, you know?
Well,
and
it can be exhausting, but if you go with it and you're willing to go with it, you know, and develop further on, it's not exhausting.
Yeah, and so what this book did is that it helped me re-examine some of my own practice as an artist. It made me re-examine how I would have a show, how I would do my shows, how I would make my work happen, what a solo is for me, what is a group show for me, what is like the work I produce, what does it look like. So like I'm doing a solo with a gallery called M&B in Los Angeles, and it's partially going to be online. And the last month or so, I've made maybe about 30 or so new works for it. And that game of orchestrating that much work in such a small amount of time, and then trying to figure out where are the pieces? Where are the hooks? How do I read this? How do I go through this process with this? This was the work that I was doing at my dinner table when working on this book. That was the test. That was that's what it offered me, was that sitting there, self-editing, questioning, writing things down, developing language, coming up with the larger arc of the thing, having my imagination run wild, and then corralling it and keeping it strong, keeping it vital, but at the same time being able to offer it to other people. Like that game, that love, that moment of doing all of that, it was extremely unique thing, you know. And I'm thinking about doing another book, and it's just kind of hard to kind of like navigate how I want that to be, but it's something where I know what the caliber of what I want to do is
You're
now.
Spoiled.
Excuse me?
You're spoiled.
Yeah, totally. And it's like, but then, you know, I figure out different ways. I figure out different modes. And like, that's the thing. It's like, as an artist, I'm always thinking about the mode of production. I'm thinking about how, whatever footing I'm on, how do I actually execute to the best of that ability? And so I have some plans. I have some thoughts.
It's great. Now we have to stop. We're running out of time.
Okay.
Double length of normally I'm talking.
Oh, sorry.
It's great. No, it was a great conversation. Thank you very much.
Patrick. I always enjoy speaking with you. And
I didn't even ask how you are or if you're healthy, but I know you look healthy.
I'm healthy. It's early here. I got up at like 6 a.m. and so I've been up early, but I'm well. My wife is well, you know, and my friends are well, and hopefully we'll stay healthy. And I hope the same for you, Patrick.
Yes, I hope so too. Yeah, I'm well. I'm fine.
Good.
But
I'm happy to hear that.
So to the next meeting, and I'm looking forward to see you again.
Yeah. If you ever want to Zoom me and just have a conversation, you can just do that.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
You're always welcome, Patrick. Thank you, sir.
See you.
Have a beautiful day.
Bye-bye.